Hi, my name is Markus. I'm from Germany, Munich. I'm the author of greenDAO and EventBus. And today I'm going to talk to you about some new stuff. So what's the agenda? We'll cover some quick basics, what an ORM is. So I want to start with a poll. Who's an Android developer? Yes, Android. Who used like an ORM? Okay, who used greenDAO? Okay, that's good. So let's start with some basics. So usually when you have a database, it looks like this. You have rows and columns. And when you want to get the data, you have to go to first row and get the first column, second column, and so on. So these are like many API calls. And also in Android, you even have to check is null and so on. So it's kind of clashing worlds. You have the objects and your database, and it's pretty low level, and you just need so much code and it's always the same code, by the way. So much code to have your data in a database. So that's why I think an ORM is something you should really use. So this helps a lot to save time and so on. So what does an ORM do? So very simple. It just gets your objects into the database and the other way. So this is like in mapping, object relational mapping, ORM. And yeah, when we talk about ORMs, there's this word entity. I will refer to it a couple of times. So this is basically just an object that is persisted in the database. So usually a database row is also an object, and a property is a column. So this is the basic mapping. There are some ORM-specific traits also for entities, like is it like generated, our annotations, do you have to use a base class, and so on. So, and this is like a typical code fragment, how you get your data to SQLite. So you have some cursor somewhere, and you have to iterate through it and get some stuff and so on. So the same thing with an ORM, like greenDAO, looks like this. So this is way shorter, right? So greenDAO started like 5 years ago, and always the top goal was performance. It's open source, it's at GitHub, and it's also like the first Android ORM with code generation. So with code generation is very important for performance, because like reflection and especially with annotation, that's super slow. And once you have, once you have greenDAO, you can use functions like this. You insert an entity or refresh it, update, delete, and so on. So it's a simple method call. So it's very straightforward. And yeah, that's another example. So you just create a new node, and when you set some property to it, and when you just say you get some DAO from greenDAO, and when you say insert. And inserting, one thing is special about it, there's a special ID, and this will be assigned during insert. So this is also like the database ID and so on. And also you can load some nodes, update it, and also delete it, of course. So this is how it looks like. So this is much more the object-oriented way to think. And there's also like a QueryBuilder. So if you know like SQL, it can be like pretty long SQL statements and so on. And like the QueryBuilder is an object-oriented way of doing this. So there's one specific thing about greenDAO where it generates some code and also some properties. So you have objects for properties to reference them in queries. You will see that in a second. And also one thing about QueryBuilder, it builds queries, and those queries can be cached, so you don't have this set up all the time. So this is a small optimization. So let's see how an example looks like when we query users, and we want it to match like Joe with the first name, and also sorted by the last name. So this is how it looks with greenDAO. You create a query builder, and when you just say, so this is one of the generated objects I talked earlier about. And you just say, the first name should equal Joe. And I want to order this by the last name. So, and all of this stuff is checked at compile time. So you cannot mistype any SQL or something. So there are also custom types. So in Java, you have like plenty of types, right? And also enums. But the database doesn't know how to handle this. That's why you can write a converter and convert it to some database type. And this is also supported by greenDAO. And also, if you do this for enums, you shouldn't persist like the name or the ordinal of the enum, which is free, but it's not so stable. If you insert a new enum in your enum list, it might break your data. So that's why you should use some ID which you define, and it will always be stable. And another important thing is our relations. So in greenDAO, you have like to-one relations and to-many relations. It's important to note that both are not managed like two ways. If you have like a one-to-many, it's always to-one or to-many. So if you have if you want to update those in both directions, you would have to do it yourself. So it works like this, that you define some foreign key properties. It doesn't have to be real foreign keys in the database, but that's just the concept. And with those, you can tell greenDAO, use this foreign key to resolve this object. And yeah, those are resolved lazily. So you will get just a getter, for example, get address. It will, on the first call, on get address, it will query the database. Okay, so this was like a quick roundup of what greenDAO is. And let's look at the newer ones. Are there any questions so far? Yes?
How exactly entities, the Java objects which are operated by greenDAO are generated? They are generated from the database, or can you define them in your code, like connect these objects to
I will actually come to that right now.
Okay.
Okay, but anyway, I was told to give out some cups for questions, so here you go. So in greenDAO 3, there are some breaking changes. For example, you have like a new Java package, and also like the Maven artifact changed. But the more interesting stuff is like one, where's the database abstraction? This will help you when you use something like SQL Cypher, which is an encrypted database, and also annotation support. And this is going in a direction of your question. But we'll start with database encryptions. So there are reasons to do it, and there are reasons to not do it. Yeah. When you encrypt your database, of course, you make it harder for some attacker to get your data. And on the other hand, Android already protects your data. So the device might be already encrypted, and of course, you have this directory only your app can use. So if somebody can break into that, something is pretty wrong already, right? And also, for encrypting, you need some key. Where do you put the key? Like if you put it in the code, attacker can easily get it, right? So this is like placing the key under the doormat, and Robert just, that's the first place where he looks. All right, so I already talked about SQL Cypher. So SQL Cypher is an alternative implementation of SQLite, and you can drop it in, and with greenDAO supports it, yeah, it's pretty simple. You will see. So where's a super thin abstraction layer, and that's why I see greenDAO doesn't use with class directly. That's the from the Android package, but has a super thin interface around this. And this allows to have like a standard and encrypted version of it, and greenDAO just works the same way. And also there's the open helper when you create your database. I think there is an example. So you start pretty much like in an unencrypted way. So you override some open helper, some migration scripts, and so on. And then here's a different thing. You just say, I want an encrypted database. And you have to provide a super secure password like here. And then, yeah, that's it. You can just get started as usual with greenDAO. So this is like the classic greenDAO setup stuff. So all that changed is this, and of course you have to also add SQL Cipher to your Gradle dependencies. Let's talk about testing a little bit. So Robolectric, who knows Robolectric? Hands up. Oh, okay, pretty much. So this also brings like database testing to plain JUnit tests. So this is also supported by Robolectric. We had to do some fixes because they were doing something wrong in Robolectric, but it's working. And the nice thing about Robolectric is it works on a desktop, but also it's very difficult or maybe even impossible to run native code on a desktop because it's compiled for ARM devices, right? And all this compiler chain and so on. So that's why SQL Cipher doesn't work. But because of this abstraction, you can also have like some switch or you inject some database or session in your code, and then you can have your business code or logic code, manager code, whatever how you want to call it, use the database. For testing, it will use like plain SQLite or with Robolectric, and in your app it can be encrypted. Okay, so let's look at like how greenDAO used to work in versions 1 and 2. So you had to define your entities inside a generator project. So this was separate from your Android project. And so this was like a meta language with schemas, entity, and so on. And this was actual Java code. And using this, it generated some entities and DAOs. So in greenDAO, it changed, version 3. So this is not required anymore. Instead, you just put like the annotation entity on your Java class, and based on this, a Gradle plugin will generate all the stuff for you. So lots of people didn't like the generator project, and so I totally agreed. We should have done this like way before, and now we're doing it. Nevertheless, like the generator project still exists in the background. It is just used by the Gradle plugin. And also, if you have like existing projects, you can still use the generator project. I think it will stay around. Question?
Yeah, I got a question regarding your plans. You want still to keep this generator in the further development, or you plan to deprecate it?
Yes.
So it's gonna be like dual mode, right?
Yeah. So, okay, I won, I guess, cup.
I like this old way.
Yeah.
I like the new way better.
Yeah. Okay. So we still will provide support for that because we also rely on it, right? Like it's just a matter of architecture. So we build a Gradle plugin on top of it. At some point, we might not like the Gradle plugin for some reason. We could switch also and still use the generator project.
I don't want to break your presentation, but the simple Java is something everyone understands, actually.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right, so this is how it looks like. So this is an example. So entity, you have some Pojo class, some getter setters with some fields, and this is just some examples. So you have an ID, you have an ID annotation. You want to have an index on a string, just put indexed. This is a relation, obviously, and this is an example for this converter thing. So this guy should be stored in the database, and the database doesn't understand this, right? So you tell greenDAO, use this converter to convert this into this database type, okay? And you can still have your types as you want it in your entity. Where's also a special tag I want to talk about. It's generated. Yeah, so greenDAO uses code generation, and it's totally transparent. So even when you're debugging, you don't see any magic going on or whatever. You really see all code. And this means that we generate some code into your entity. So it will be side to side with your code. And this will be marked with a generated tag and also some hash, so greenDAO knows that you changed or didn't change that code. So if you, for example, by accident change something in the generated code, it will complain. It won't overwrite your code, but it will complain, hey, please fix this. So this is very safe that you don't lose any code. And if you're very sure what you're doing, you can override generated code and just put keep annotation on it instead of generated. Yeah. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is Rx support, which was introduced in greenDAO 3.1. So RxJava is very popular. So yeah, I'm happy that even some people are here because there's the Rx presentation in the big room. And yeah, who uses RxJava, by the way? Okay, wow, a lot of people. And who like it a lot? Okay, who doesn't like RxJava? Okay, all right. So my personal opinion is it's cool for many things, but it's getting just too complicated. There's an exception, and or why is it not executing on this and this thread? But yeah, it's basically it's not so bad. Okay, so also there is a connection with databases because you don't want to do too much on your main thread. You don't want to block the UI. You don't want to skip frames and so on. So that's why you want to offload more complex operations to a separate flag. And this is where Rx also comes in. So it's also a matter of taste. Some are super strict and say nothing ever database on the main thread. I'm usually not that strict because it just works because it's like 1 millisecond or something. That's okay. So greenDAO has already some model for this with asynchronous sessions, but also as an alternative, there's Rx support now. Yeah, so basically there are wrappers for all the important classes in greenDAO, which do it the Rx way. So, for example, there's an DAO or transaction, and yeah. And this is just the first step for Rx support. There will be also like a query if the data changes, those queries, those observers, subscribers will be updated. So what do we have now? We have an Rx DAO. So if you already have a DAO from in your code, you can just call Rx and you will get an Rx DAO, which offers like the same methods, but usually returns an observer. So you can subscribe to that. It also, like the default way, is that it is already wired to like the I/O scheduler, because database, that's basically I/O, right? So you don't have to set the threading here. If you don't like that, you can use Rx plain instead of Rx. So it's just some convenience. Basically, the same stuff is going on for transactions. And there are two methods. So you can give either a runnable or a callable, and this runnable will be executed as a transaction. Okay, and probably in the I/O thread. And the same, or like the similar way is with queries. So when you have a query builder, you call Rx, and you will get an Rx query. There are three methods. So it's depending on what result you expect. Either you expect like a unique result, like one object, or a list. And for lists, there are actually like two ways of doing it, like with list and one by one. And I will talk about that. And also, again, the scheduling thing, I/O scheduler versus plain. So now what's the difference between list and one by one? Like the list is just waiting for the entire result, and you will get, like this observer thing, will get a list back. Complete list, everything done. The one by one, you will get entity by entity. So this is more the streaming way of doing it, right? And also you can cancel it, like you scan like the first 3 items and when you say, okay, that's fine. You don't have to get an entire list. All right, so some smaller changes. Where else? Yeah, just question. There's no second cup for you, by the way.
One question about the observables. There are those not called they are called observables. Yes. So every time when I will try to get the data resubscribe, I will get the query one more time, or do you cache the data somewhere?
Yeah. So right now it's really straightforward. Something like this would be like the next step. Also, like I said with the queries, if results are changing, you will get new callbacks and so on. And also because we are using protocol buffers, we also added protocol buffers. Who's using this, by the way? Hands up. Oh, okay, not so many people. And yeah, so annotation processing was a big step, and obviously there were a couple of fixes during the time, but right now there's nothing too bad going on with annotation processing, so it's kind of stable. Okay, and yeah, like in the entry I said, like greenDAO's goal is performance, and like even 5 years after start of greenDAO, it's still the fastest ORM, at least in our tests. But I also checked like the tests, how others ORM guys do it, and it pretty much matches what they do. And yeah, so higher is better, right? Just all right. Okay.
I have a question about the performance, because there was a list of different frameworks, and what about Realm? Because there was no Realm, no connection, and
okay, yeah.
What's the difference in performance? I guess.
So Realm is, yeah, it depends. It is a little bit slow. Sorry, it's a bit faster than SQLite, but it depends. It's not always faster. And for example, I think delete or something, it's a little slower. So, and yeah, it's not an ORM, so it was just not matching to this thing here. Okay. So when I was working with greenDAO, I kind of stumbled upon some limitations. So for one, like SQLite, it's not always as responsive as it could be because it's doing some maintenance stuff or whatever. So it doesn't have the best performance, and also it's like a column-based, and with object-based, it just also from a performance perspective, it's not always the best match. And also SQLite has been around since 2000, okay, and there's so much innovation going on at the server side with NoSQL. So that's why we asked ourselves, if we design a database today, how would it look like? And so this is the something else part. That's the fun part. And yeah, so we worked on a new product. It's called ObjectBox. And yeah, so as I said, it's based on the learnings from greenDAO. We know it's quite well what is going on, like the interface to the database, and what are the problems, and how can we solve that. So it is a new database. And it's not on top of SQLite, but we exchanged that part completely. So right now, it runs on Android and on some desktops, and we will also do iOS, of course. Yeah, and the major part why we did it, it's fast. It's really fast. And that's why this is like the main objective, the main focus is really performance. So we do a lot of stuff in C or C++ here, because Android is not the best VM we know. Like Java desktop is really fast, but Android not so much. And also we want to cut down all those funny middle layers, like the SQLite system API. We just want to get rid of those and keep it really simple. And this also is like those goals are like kind of interconnected. If you do less stuff, you do it faster. So let's look at the API. And you have some objects here, right? You want to store them. In ObjectBox, you put them in a box. You want to get them, you get them out of the box. And to delete them, you remove them out of the box. So this is also a straightforward API. And it's important to know where there's a box for each type. And to get a box, you go to the box store and just say your type, and you will get a specific box for that. So in code, it looks like this. Here, box store, I want it for some class. Then you just put a new box in, new object in it. You can get some objects out of it. You can remove it and count it, whatever. There's also like a query API for that. And it's pretty similar to what you know from greenDAO. And also, of course, we like annotations, so it makes sense we just continue with that. And it's really important that an object is still like a super simple Java object. It's not any magic that requires you to use some thread, some specific thread for these objects. Or when you access a getter, it doesn't do any funny database stuff. You have the data when you have the object. So this is really simple. And also, there's just put. There's no insert or update. You just always say put, okay? And there's internally, there's just one differentiation based on the ID. Is the ID 0? Then it's a new object. So this is just important for indexing. And also, if you can give like a list of objects, and it doesn't even matter what is it a new object, old object? You just put it. Okay, so super simple. And yeah, so we already talked about unit testing, and my opinion is it's not worth the effort to mock out. Where's the question?
What's the benefit over actually the actual Java containers, or What brings it to the developer over the standard Java containers? Tree map or hash set or something? What does this object box give us?
So this is about persistence, right? It's a database. So all the stuff you put in the box is persisted.
It's like an object store with no SQL overlay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, good point. I should have made that more clear. So this is really a database storing data. So with testing, when I do projects, I don't like mock out the database or whatever. It's just too much effort for me. So what options do we have? We can do Android instrumentation tests. Those are, you need a device and so on, and it's really slow, compile time, indexing. But also like the Robolectric tests, those are pretty slow to boot, okay? And with ObjectBox, I can try, if I have it open, yeah. So this is just a test suite. I hit run and done. Okay, so this is very quick. Which one was it? Damn it. Yeah, this one. Okay. So how does it work? Because it also works on the desktop. So you use some you get some DLL or SO, and it just works on the desktop. And this is another funny thing we did. So where's a compatibility layer on top of ObjectBox? Question.
Actually, I have a question because you present ObjectBox as a different version of storing data, different version of greenDAO. Can we use the same annotation which we used for greenDAO to ObjectBox as well?
Yeah, pretty much the same. There are some differences, but yeah, for example, I think it's like column name, and there are no columns in ObjectBox, so it's maybe DB name, but the basic annotations are the same.
Okay, because I'm just wondering how quick we can change greenDAO to ObjectBox.
Yeah, and this is a perfect question for this, because this is a layer on top of ObjectBox, and it gives you like a greenDAO API, okay? So it doesn't matter what is under it. Is it greenDAO or ObjectBox? It's pretty much the same API. And for existing apps, this makes switching really easy to ObjectBox. And if you're not totally convinced if ObjectBox is the best thing ever, you can still use it with dao-compat. And if you don't like it, just switch to greenDAO. Okay? So it's not finished. So I'm giving kind of sneak preview here. Some APIs, it's like version 1.9. And so there are a couple of things you want to do. Make the API stable, and also have like if you have an int array in your object, we should be really stored without like a new table or something complicated like that. Just store an int array as a property. That's no problem. Also relations, where like there are a couple of conditions that greenDAO can and ObjectBox not yet. And also migrations. Right now, if you add properties or entities, it's done automatically. But if you rename stuff, greenDAO doesn't, ObjectBox doesn't know if it's just a rename or was it like remove and add. So where's some stuff you need to provide. Yeah, and there's an early adopter program. So if you're interested in using ObjectBox, it's not yet public, come speak to me and we can arrange something. We will give extra support. We want ObjectBox to be used and we want you to be happy with it. So we will do best we can with that. Yeah. And these are benchmark how it performs versus SQLite. And yeah, bigger is better. It also depends on what data it is. And like 100,000 entities is not a problem at all. And also like queries, it's very fast. It has indexing. So if you look up some string, it is way faster than SQLite. All right. That's it.
So coming back to the greenDAO 3 and further, do you have any hints for keeping the ProGuard happy? So did you experience any problems with the ProGuard settings on the new way of generating the greenDAO code?
No, not really. You have to, like, more with the Rx thing. If you don't use Rx, you have to have some additional do not warn things. But other than that, it didn't change much.
Not really. Okay, so the second one is about this async session, I think. Is it only nice to use with RxJava, or you would recommend it for any?
It's separate.
Okay.
It's a separate concept. Either you use async session or Rx.
Okay. So the last one would be still, do you recommend caching the session objects within the application, or rather, because I tend to have like a single session object if I don't need anything else. So this is
yes. That's exactly the right thing to do.
Okay.
So in your app, usually even in your app instance, application, Android, whatever application thing, you store a DAO session. So that's perfectly the way to do it. Okay.
Oh, so you said that ObjectBox is not public right now.
Yes.
And what about dao-compat? So I can use dao-compat and then just switch to ObjectBox?
You need ObjectBox for dao-compat because it works on top of it.
Okay.
So, but if you're interested, come to me. I probably can give you something.
Okay, thank you.
Some early access. More questions?
This new library, this box, will be support RxJava?
The funny thing is with dao-compat it already does, because dao-compat also covers this Rx stuff. It just ObjectBox not yet, but dao-compat does do this.
Okay, nice.
Okay. No more questions. So, another one.
I got the question regarding the ObjectBox. I'm wondering how did you store the data? I mean, do you use separate file container for every box type or something like that?
It's pretty much one file.
One file for everything. Okay.
No, not. It's just it's like a memory mapped file for everything.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have any roadmap for next feature for greenDAO, or you're now focusing on ObjectBox?
So the idea is to support both. So developers have a choice, and some people like SQLite, SQL, and some just love objects, and so yeah, this is the way we want to tackle it. Just support both. There was another question here. Oh, here.
In some ORMs, you can also use some kind of SQL code to instead of using generated method. Can we use it in greenDAO 3 and ObjectBox or not?
So in greenDAO, you can always have something. It's called a raw query, and you can just do any SQL here and get some objects back. In ObjectBox, obviously not, because it's not SQL.
Okay.
Questions? Okay, so I guess we're ready for lunch. Thank you.